joined by Sean Hunley and Christina Orozco. We're going to talk some Dallas Cowboys football. Again, unfortunately, didn't get the game they were looking for last week. Tried to rebound against the Ravens, had a great fourth quarter comeback, but in the end, it comes up short. So they'll take on the Giants tonight. Christina, I'll start with you. Do you think they can get back on track?
I don't think so. I think with their defense, they just cannot stop any runs. I think that's the main issue. I mean, in order to be a successful football team or even to win, you have to, first of all, have your offensive be able to run the ball and your defense being able to stop runs, and the Cowboys can't do either. So I think on both parts, it's not looking good for them. I don't think they're very united as a team right now. They don't have their right rhythm right now.
Yep. And Sean?
I probably have to agree. I mean, as much as I want to say the Cowboys aren't going to do good because I'm not a Cowboys fan, I mean, they should win this game 100%. Single-handedly, they should destroy the Giants. They should torch their secondary. They don't even have any secondary. They lost their star player, Xavier McKinney, to the Packers. There's not really anybody on the Giants that I'm looking at. It's like, oh my gosh, that's incredibly scary. I mean, you've got the defensive line with Kayvon Thibodeau, Brian Burns, Dexter Lawrence. But I mean, if you can hold those guys and have a decent game as far as O-line goes, and get Dak, get the ball to CD pretty early, get a couple touchdowns on the board before the first half's over, this should be an easy win for the Cowboys. I do not see them losing this game by a long shot.
Yeah, they'll have to hope so. But before we get into some more preview, I want to talk a little bit about the Ravens game. I'll start with you this time, Sean. What do you think went wrong, obviously, for the Cowboys, and do you think they'll be able to build off the momentum they did have in the fourth quarter?
I didn't see a lot of defensive play as far as busted coverage, but they just looked terrible. I mean, Derrick Henry, Lamar Jackson, Justice Hill, they all ran for a great game last week. I mean, Derrick Henry had more open holes than I've probably seen as far as Cowboys defense goes. They haven't allowed this many rushing yards since I believe it's 2020. I mean, they look terrible right now. Mozzie Smith looks terrible. Tyler Guyton's not having a great year. I mean, he's a rookie, but I'm just not seeing a lot of progress out of that team.
Tina?
Yeah, again, to add on with Derrick Henry, he had 151 yards last week. I think that's kind of embarrassing. We haven't even faced tough teams yet. We're facing the Giants this time, and if we don't win against the Giants, then we're going to have a really rough season ahead of us. Again, our defense is almost like the worst in the NFL when it comes to running passes, and their defense just kind of fell apart. I think they got a really late start to actually their offense kind of getting a hold of it, and it was just too late for them, obviously.
Yeah, absolutely. You talked about Derrick Henry. Lamar Jackson as well just ran over this team, and we'll talk a little more about the run defense because I'm not sure what it's going to take to get it together. But I want to mention Derrick Henry just a little more because this was a player who trains here in Dallas, expressed desire to come to the Cowboys, and the Cowboys had no interest. They even asked Jerry Jones after the game, said they couldn't afford him when he just dished out two of the most expensive contracts in NFL history on CeeDee Lamb and Dak Prescott. So, yeah, we know that's not really the truth there. I'll start with you this time, Sean. Do you think that the Cowboys team would have benefited?
To your point, TB. And now Jackson will keep it left side again.
They would have benefited from getting Derrick Henry. Look at their run game; it's terrible. Zeke's not what he used to be. He had what a year and a half being in the league. The worst part is that Derrick Henry wanted to come here, and the Cowboys just didn't even talk to him.
Exactly.
Everybody thought that they couldn't afford him. That's just not true.
It's not.
To your point, TB. And now Jackson will keep it.
The mind of Jerry Jones to not get a marquee player like that, who still got a couple of good years left. I mean, look what he's doing in Baltimore right now. He torched Dallas this weekend. He's going to keep doing it.
Yep, absolutely. And Tina, I'll let you expand on that. But this is a team, he talked about it, the run game, both on defense and offense, hasn't been there. Zeke had 3 carries last week. Rico Dowdle's struggled to really get going. Do you think, obviously, he would have helped, but beyond him, what's it going to take to get this run game going?
I think there just needs to be, again, more unity within the team. I think we have 8 All-Pros, and it's not really looking like we have they have the most in the NFL, the Cowboys, and it doesn't look like we have a team with that many All-Pros. So I think they would have benefited from him. I guess they just overlooked him. The whole money thing, I think that's just hypocritical, saying the contracts that they just signed. So
I think it's just a publicity stunt. I mean, you see what Jerry does in the media. You see this, the kind of stuff he spews out. It's just terrible publicity, especially for a team that really needs some good publicity, and they're not getting it with these 2 losses. It's just Jerry creating another stigma of I'm all in. I'm going to do all this and that for the Cowboys, and then it's just you're getting terrible media coverage, and that's just not helping your team right now.
Yep, the team clearly was not all in this offseason, despite what Jerry said. But before we get into the Giants preview, I wanted to mention one thing that kind of was concerning a lot of fans, and that was CeeDee Lamb's behavior on field during the game. He was slamming his hands down, throwing a fit after some missed plays. Michael Parsons also expressed frustration on the sidelines. Sean, how do you think this impacts the team, and do you think you can be positive from this, or do you think this is just bad chemistry?
I mean, 100%. I mean, they're rightly so to be visibly frustrated with how the team is playing. He's making so much money. I mean, and he deserves it rightly, but they're underperforming, but it's not a matter of CD's underperforming because he's just not doing well. It's the team itself is not performing up to the level that that you're expected to be. With the amount of coverage you get in the media, and you're expected to do X, Y, and Z in a season that the Cowboys should have a pretty good season, and the stuff they're putting on the field is it's terrible.
Yep, and absolutely. With CeeDee Lamb, I mean, I think the most thing was the fans are frustrated because he was the one that fumbled the ball. He was the one that was having drops. Really was not his best game, and for him to be the one frustrated, I think fans saw it as like, hey, what are you doing? Do you think CeeDee Lamb can step up in this game and sort of bounce back from that performance?
I think he can step up. I think the whole ordeal with his attitude, might have been a wake-up call. He did publicly apologize to Dak and saying that they are brothers till the end. And I think maybe it was a wake-up call. He's maybe realizing that maybe I shouldn't act like this. Maybe I need to individually step up for my team and, don't really call out the other players like that. Really in their face over that game. I couldn't believe that behavior, honestly.
Yep, absolutely. And it's going to be interesting, obviously. This is a Giants team, like we talked about, not the best. The Cowboys have not lost to them since 2019. Dak Prescott hasn't lost since 2016 when he was a rookie. So I'll start with you this time, Tina. Do you think the Cowboys can get back on track today? And what's it going to take for the defense to really respond?
I think, again, emphasizing unity, just really knocking down the runs of the other team. And I think offensively, they're a little bit better than their defense, but maybe really, again, locking in on Dak and CD really early on in the game rather than having a really late kind of upbringing in the fourth quarter like last time.
The Giants' key star is obviously it's going to be Malik Neighbors, but you put your top corner on Malik Neighbors, shut him down, load the box too. I mean, make Daniel Jones win this game, make him hit Darius Slayton and Wan'Dale Robinson, who aren't really that great on that Giants team. It's like I said, it's the Giants. They're not very good, but make Daniel Jones win that game. Show me that you can beat a team that you need to beat. I mean, if you lose this game, I mean, you're hitting the panic button.
Yep.
I don't see a way where the Cowboys lose this game, but if they do, I don't know what to say.
Yeah, it's rough. It's rough, and absolutely, that's important too. I think the Giants are similarly built in terms of their offensive style, maybe kind of like the Browns. The Cowboys, it feels like a mirage week one. It doesn't even feel real anymore. But they did have a good game. The defense played great, and they were able to shut down Deshaun Watson. Tina, do you think they can put that kind of pressure on Daniel Jones, especially because the Giants don't have the run game they have, especially after losing Saquon Barkley this offseason?
Yeah, I think last week they did wonderfully against the Browns, which I think was completely unexpected from everyone. I think Daniel Jones, he did fantastic with 236 yards last week. I think he could do good against this Cowboys defense again because they're struggling this time around.
Yeah, and Sean, I think the thing that did go right for the Cowboys defense in week one was they got the pass rushing going. And they've been unable to do that against the Saints and Ravens, mostly because of their run game. Do you think they can kind of flip the script against the Giants, get that pass rush going, and put pressure on Daniel Jones, make him make some mistakes?
Yeah, I mean, I think a big thing, it's, maybe move some players around, maybe kind of stack some players on, like, for instance, like Kendricks. Stack Kendricks on Parsons' side and then flip the script, and just – you got to see how the Giants are playing the run, depending on what Daniel Jones wants to do, if he wants to get out early and try to make some big passes to Malik Neighbors. If that's not going to work, see where he's going with the ball. Where does he want to go? Who is he looking at? So I think it's going to be a matter of, can Micah kind of read Daniel Jones and maybe flip the script and try to get it on the other side and then just completely, I don't know, I'd say just crash the run.
Yeah, and absolutely. I'll let you finish it. Okay, off Tina. What is your one key for victory for the Cowboys tonight?
Again, the defense. They just need to stop those runs. They just can't let them through it. I think if they lose this, they'll be 1-3. It'll look really rough. Again, we have way harder teams to face than the Giants. If we don't win against the Giants, then I think their season is going to be completely down the hill. And especially it's going to be at risk for Mike McCarthy as well. Yeah, absolutely. The Cowboys do play tonight, 7:15 against New York in New York. We'll see if they can bounce back. But one team that did bounce back last week was UNT football. We're going to talk about them next.
I'm here to rescue you.
Oh, my prince.
No sofás.
This story is going to be awesome.
just got hit by a car. Let's go see what happened. Ma'am, are you okay? Are you okay?
Did you see that lady hit me with a car?
Yeah, we did. I got it all on video.
Oh my God.
Let's go over here and talk about how we can prevent that.
Yeah, not the hospital.
Well, right now we're going to ask you a couple questions on how we can drive safely in the parking lot. What are ways that we can be aware of our surroundings?
Oh, we can look both ways.
Jenna, also, how about putting the distractions away?
Yes, just like our phones, turning our music down, and also not focusing on our passengers.
Where can you get information on how to get a parking pass?
Transportation.unt.edu.
If you park in a garage, make sure you pay on the app or look for further instructions on how you should pay.
And remember, no pass, no park. Let's all try to keep our Mean Green community safe.
Remember, we're all in this together.
Drive safe.
Did you know you have access to video equipment like DVDs, video games, and cameras? That's right, you do. Come on down to Chilton Library and fulfill your media dream. Located on the bottom floor next to the student sculpture. Hope to see you there soon. Hey girl, you know you look good.
I like the way you move and groove. I'm not sure.
Welcome back to Sportszone. I'm joined by Gunnar Talbot and Mason Branham, and we're going to talk some UNT football. They got a huge bounce-back win against Wyoming this past weekend. We'll see if they can kind of keep that momentum going. Gunnar, what do you think went right for UNT this weekend?
Well, I think we did a very good job offensively. I think Chandler Morris should get a huge shout-out. He finally didn't have a game where he was turning the ball over. You know, he had good percentage, 305 yards, 2 touchdowns. He limited his his interceptions. And I think another person to point out is DT Sheffield. He had a great receiving game, 109 yards. You know, Shane Porter had 113 yards. You know, our offense altogether had a great game. And Mackenzie McGillis, one of our backup running backs, 6 carries, 3 touchdowns. That's a 50% rate right there. That's great offensive numbers.
Definitely. That's a lot of good points there. UNT got a 44-17 win, so they really got that bounce back they were looking for. Wyoming, yes, an 0-3 team, but Mason, do you think that this was sort of a statement win for UNT?
I think this was a big statement win. I mean, one thing that a lot of UNT fans had coming into questions that they had coming into this game was the defense. And one thing that I kind of heard that Coach Morris talked about in his post-game press conference was that they switched to a little bit of a different defensive scheme. They went from the 3-5-3 to a 3-4, and honestly, I think that was a really good decision. I mean, one thing that the defense has struggled with is those big pass plays and giving up a lot of time for the quarterback to kind of, maybe look to see, trying to get a receiver open. But I think that 3-4, it really helped kind of put some pressure on the opposing quarterback. So I think that was a good, but again, kind of like what Gunnar said, Morris had a good game, 305, 2 touchdowns, no picks, no fumbles. That's really good. And I think just as a whole, this offense has looked really good.
Yeah, absolutely. We just finished talking about the Cowboys, who haven't made adjustments on defense. UNT did, and I think, like you said right there, that sort of formation shift, that scheme shift, it made a big difference for this team. Gunnar, do you think they'll stick with that going forward?
I sure hope they do. We need a better defense. We gave up 17 points to Wyoming, which is good, but it's the most points they've scored all season, and they are 0-4, so they weren't really the best competition. But going forward against better AAC teams that can get those big yardage plays, I think we should keep that defense.
Yeah, I'll defend them just a little bit because technically it was only 10. One of those was a special teams touchdown. That may be its own issue, but we'll definitely work on that. I'm going to go to you this time, Mason. What do you think went really important for this team offensively?
Well, I think kind of what we've been talking about Morris. He had a really good kind of bounce-back game after that Tech game where he had those 3 big interceptions. But one thing that I kind of saw that I liked to see was the running game. I mean, our rushing had a lot of, we had a lot of guys going. We had Mackenzie McGill, who had 6 carries, only 38 yards, but 3 touchdowns. And then you had Shane Porter with 13 carries and 120 yards. I mean, we had 216 rushing yards. And that, being able to have kind of like that balanced offense of both passing and rushing, I think it's going to be really good for this team. I think, whenever you have those games where Morris kind of struggles a little bit, maybe gets a couple turnovers or doesn't have as good of a game as he can have, being able to rely on that running game and kind of just put some pressure off of Morris and put it on the running backs. I think they kind of stepped up and showed that they have the ability to take over this offense.
Yeah, absolutely. Those are the stats we want to see. I mean, 305 yards for Chandler Morris. That really makes a big difference. And I think, like you said, that run game took some of the pressure off him. He wasn't having to make these big-time plays. He used his legs a little bit. We talked a little bit about that last week. I'd like to see it. But Chandler Morris, the no interceptions, I think was the big thing. And now, here we are. We're 3-1. Obviously, that Tech loss was tough. But now going into conference play, how are you feeling, Gunnar, about this team?
I'm feeling really confident about this team. Like you said, the Tech loss was a bad loss, but you take that away, and our 3 wins, as our offense, we're averaging 43.6 points a game. That's lightning numbers, and that's with, our turnover problem that we've been having. So I'm very confident about this Tulsa game, actually. Last year we won. It was a close game. It was a 1-score game. They're coming off a good win against Louisiana Tech, an overtime win. But, they showed faults in that game. They were up big, and they started, cracking at the seams, and they gave up a little bit. And they did win it, but it was a close one. And I think with UNT, with our high-powered offense, if we get out there, we get some defensive stops, and our offense, is good, we can really come away with the W here.
Yep, definitely, Mason. So Tulsa is 2-2 now at this point in the season. This is our first American Conference matchup. Do you think this is really going to be a chance for UNT to make a statement and show their competitors in the AAC?
Yeah, I definitely think this is going to be a big game for them. I think going into conference play, you have those 4-3-4 kind of tune-up games, get ready for conference play. And for them to come into this game, it's going to be really important for them to get a win. I think if they can start off strong in conference play, I think that momentum can kind of carry them forward throughout conference play. And I could see them being, one of the, maybe not the favorites to win the conference, but definitely a contender.
Yeah, absolutely. Gunnar, do you think they can compete in the AAC?
I do. I think if we can win this game, we can solidify ourselves as at least a top 3 team in the conference for now, just behind Army and Navy. They're undefeated. They're very good. But outside of them, we're doing very good. If we can just beat Tulsa, our defense just needs to get off the field, and our offense just needs to move it.
Yep, absolutely. Mason, I will ask you, we preview this Tulsa game. What do you think is going to be the biggest thing for UNT to get right from the get-go?
Well, I think the first big key is no turnovers. I mean, we saw that last week. That was a really big point and kind of emphasis of going into that game. Chandler didn't want to turn the ball over. Offense as a whole didn't want to turn the ball over. And so I think that's going to be a big thing. I also think another big thing, kind of going back to that defense, play a little bit more 3-4. We saw it against Oklahoma. It worked well. I think one of the things that kind of struggled with the previous formation was the D-line really wasn't able to, get off their blocks and get to the quarterback. And I think having that extra linebacker, that can kind of make a couple moves, force some pressure on the quarterback, I think that's going to be key. Balanced offense, again, I think having that run and pass game is going to be huge. Limit the big plays, You don't necessarily need to play your corners and safeties way back like you normally would, but you also don't want to put them tight. You don't want to be right up against a guy, you have a receiver make one or 2 moves and they're already 20 yards down the field. So I think that's going to be big. And then penalties. Last game we saw penalties were a bit of an issue. They had 8 penalties for 70 yards. So I think limiting the penalties, turnovers, having that balanced offense, and playing that good defense, I think that's going to be that helps win the game.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be definitely see how they can respond. This is now conference matchups, like we said. This is it. This is really when it's going to matter. Gunnar, what do you think are going to be their biggest keys for victory?
Kind of piggybacking off what he said. Again, ball security is a big thing. We saw Chandler Morris. He had 3 interceptions in back-to-back games, not including last game. And I think if we can run the ball, rely on our running backs, who show they can do it. They can do it against good schools. That would really help the offense defensively. Again, limit those big plays, bring those safeties in smaller.
Tighter.
Shallower. Yeah. And then on special teams, you can't be giving up those punt returns, those kickoff returns. Those are just 2 big plays.
Yeah, absolutely. Special teams, that's going to be something, to look out for. Want to clean up those little mistakes. And I'll let you expand on the defense a little bit. You talked about pass rush. You think they can really get that going? Especially they have some good cornerbacks. Tashada is definitely a big name. Do you think the pass rush can get going and put some pressure on Wyoming?
I mean, yeah. Well, you mean Tulsa?
Or Tulsa, excuse me, yeah.
Yes,
Tulsa
Tulsa
worked against Wyoming.
Multiple sacks to Louisiana Tech last year. Their left tackle was looking quite, vulnerable. And I think as long as we can bring pressure, bring blitzes, blitz early, make the quarterback uncomfortable in the pocket, we can really get to him.
Yep, absolutely. Mason?
Well, I think kind of going back to the point that I made about the 3-5 going to the 3-4. With the 3-5, with the D-line not able to give off their blocks quick or, pressure the quarterback, that gives the quarterback time. Maybe with that pass defense, you have your receivers covered, but if you give a quarterback enough time and, maybe he tells the receiver like, hey, go here, go there, try to get open, that gives the receivers enough time to be able to get open. With the 3-4, you're able to bring that extra pressure, bring that extra guy up, not give the quarterback as much time, so you don't have to rely on your secondary to cover their receivers as much. So I think that's going to be big, but yeah, I think just the D-line being able to get off their blocks, attack, be very aggressive with defense, but also a little bit, conservative with the passing. I think that's going to be a key point for the defense.
Yeah, definitely. And then, Gunnar, I'll ask you, switching over to the offense, we talked about DT Sheffield had a pretty good game, but Damon Ward Jr. hasn't quite had the game that he'd had, since week 1. Obviously, that's not quite sustainable, but do you think he's a guy that can really step up and kind of get back to that number 1 receiver role?
I think you really can. We see the scheme some routes for him, get him open. Teams are they're looking at him, they're doubling. That's why DT Sheffield was able to have such a good game last week. As long as we can really scheme for him and get him open. Again, running the ball. We should also run the ball, take the pressure off Chandler Morris. We don't want to see those 3 interceptions again. That's just rough. And our offense has been moving the ball well, so I don't really have too much concern about that. And again, our kicker had a great game last week. We went 3 for 3, made a 45, which I think is long for the season. I think our offense is good.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll have to see. Mason, I want to finish it off with you. UNT just announced its recommitment to the AAC for years to come. Do you think that's a good move for UNT with the football program and athletics as a whole?
Yeah, I definitely think that's a good decision on their part. I think one thing that we kind of talked about a lot with American Conference is they're one of the best group of 5s. They're not necessarily that Power 5 or Power 4 now, but I think for UNT it's helpful for them. And I think one thing that I kind of like about UNT is they can have a similar outlook like SMU had. Whenever they first joined the American, they kind of, developed their own image and kind of made some moves in the American. Now they're in the ACC. So I think UNT, it's good for them to build their image in the American, and then, maybe few years down the road, we might see them, in the Big 12 or Big 10 or heck, maybe even the SEC. You don't really know, but I think just as a whole, it's going to be nice.
Yep, we'll definitely have to see. So UNT, see if they can keep their momentum going against Tulsa. But for now, we're going to talk about a team in the Dallas Mavericks, and we'll see if they can get their momentum going for next season.
Why should you join Talons?
We are very welcoming to people who may be a little bit hesitant. There's people currently right now in our organization who are in leadership positions who were hesitant before to join, and they found out that they just loved the organization and wanted to be a bigger part of it. They post about the football games, everything they're doing, all their events that they host.
What's the best part about Talons?
I would say meeting new people, because the university, while it's a kind of small campus in terms of physical land, there's a ton of people here. And so getting to meet all these people who have so much school spirit and love for this university and want to spread that to other people, it's kind of like a little miniature family that we're in.
I'm so tired. I feel ugly.
Clip on it.
I'm not okay.
Oh, okay. So
I didn't know UNT had counseling services. Maybe I should check it out. This looks like the place.
Welcome back to Sportszone. I'm your host, Steven Lucero. I am joined by Rohan Srinivasan and Timothy Scott. We're going to talk some Dallas Mavericks basketball. The Mavs really had a great season last year, kind of overperformed, I think to a lot of expectations, making it all the way to the NBA Finals. Unfortunate loss to the Celtics, but I'll start with you, Timothy. Do you think the Mavs have what it takes to get back to the Finals this season?
Absolutely. I think, the offseason they had a lot of good moves, added a lot of names. You lost a couple big ones, but overall, I think they definitely have the talent and the ability to get back to the finals.
All right, Rohan?
Yeah, of course I think that they can get back to the finals. You got a guy in Luka Magic, MVP favorite. He should have won it last year, in my opinion. But, you got a guy in him and Klay Thompson. We're going to talk about him in a bit later. But, yeah, I really like the moves that this team has made. And, of course, we can go back to the finals. Why not?
Yep, absolutely. So the Mavs, they had an interesting offseason, some good moves, some, players you lost, players you got. Rohan, I'll start with you this time. Who do you think was the biggest addition for the Mavericks?
I think it's pretty obvious, guys. It's Klay Thompson.
There we go.
3 years, $50 million. Really like him as a player. You can talk about Quentin Grimes, Najee Marshall, but Klay Thompson is the big fish here, the splash of the offseason, no pun intended there. But with Klay Thompson, 3 years, $50 million, I really like him as a player, and he can fill in that role of Derrick Jones Jr. being a three-point corner shooter. You got him as a 41.3% three-point shooter. He can definitely be an upgrade for us.
Yep, absolutely. Timothy, I'll ask you this time. Quentin Grimes, Najee Marshall, some other guys the Mavs brought in. Aside from Klay Thompson, who do you think was the biggest addition?
I think for the Mavericks, it's got to be Najee Marshall. He'll fill in the role of Derrick Jones Jr. You know, he's a 3-and-D kind of guy.
New York City Mayor Eric Adams has been indicted on 5 federal charges.
We
have the latest.
Rotation name and another
Hurricane Helene is set to make landfall tonight. We'll take a look at how the states and its path are preparing.
Even PJ Washington, Najee Marshall's definitely the guy.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting to watch. Rohan, I'll throw it back to Klay Thompson for you here.
Yeah.
Do you think Klay Thompson can be that missing piece for a championship
Oh,
team?
yeah, he can. Even at this age, I really want to point something out. They'll take his latest game, 0 for 10, 0 points in the play-in game versus the Sacramento Kings. But you know what's really cool is that he also scored 37 points in a single quarter, mind you, against the same franchise, the Sacramento Kings. I know it was a long time ago, but still, he's a big fish in the offseason. And the fact that we got him for 3 years, $50 million, I really like that move. Filling in for Derrick Jones Jr., really playing alongside Luka and Kyrie. Oh, man, I can't wait to see how that plays out.
Yeah, I really liked what you said there, especially with big fish. The Mavs, really for a while, I think have just been unable to attract these big-time free agents to Dallas. Even during the Dirk Nowitzki days, got that incredible championship in 2011, but yeah, he struggled to really get the help he needed, I think, through a lot of his career. And there was fears that would be the same thing with Luka. But, they brought in Kyrie in a trade, Klay Thompson now. These players seem more willing to come to Dallas. Timothy, do you think GM Nico Harrison has made an impact on that?
Absolutely. I think him coming in and helping rebuild the team after the Dirk years, signing Luka, that's a big gamble that he took, and it worked out. And so for him to build off of that, get guys like Kyrie, Daniel Gafford, and then sign Klay Thompson this offseason, Nico Harrison is definitely building a winning culture in Dallas, and it's something that's going to attract players because players want to win.
Yeah, absolutely. Rohan?
I just want to add a little bit onto that. Nico Harrison has a great relationship with Kyrie Irving, which is one of the reasons why he went into Dallas. But he's that type of guy, who's a GM, who's a leader. I know Mark Cuban, I really like Mark Cuban especially, but the fact of the matter is that he could not attract any big fish to Dallas, even though he had Dirk Nowitzki, supposed to be an attraction spot. No state income tax, what is there not to love about Texas? So, getting Nico Harrison, I hope we extend him even more. Great move.
Yep, absolutely. And I think, that's important. Of course, those moves, Kyrie Irving actually had a big impact in signing Klay Thompson. There were some reports that came about that he talked to him. Kyrie Irving's one of those guys that, as much as the media and the fans like to hate on him, has a lot of respect among players in the league. And I think that was really key. You talked about, Timothy, Daniel Gafford, PJ Washington. These are some big signings that you got at last year's trade deadline. How do you think they can continue to improve as they, go into really their first full season as Mavericks?
I think the biggest improvement is chemistry, right? I mean, working with Luka and Kyrie, they're both great athletes. I mean, PJ Washington is as athletic as they come, right? So being able to work the pick and roll better, catch more lobs, shoot some threes, the biggest thing for them is going to be working team chemistry with the point guards, as well as improving defense. I mean, they were already great last year, but being able to defend even better, especially Gafford, him and Lively can really step up in the paint, force teams to shoot. With our perimeter defense we signed, I think we'll have a way better defense this year.
Yep, definitely. I liked what you said there, especially about the defense. Rohan, do you think that this team can continue to improve defensively? And, this is a team, I'll mention, like he said, a few years ago, they were one of the worst defenses in the league. Now, they've really come a long way in just half a season. Do you think they can keep going this season?
Absolutely. Again, why not? You got Daniel Gafford, you got Derek Lively. Talking about that even, I want Derek Lively and Daniel Gafford to actually start, just because I don't want, PJ Washington coming off I do want him coming off the bench actually, but in terms of, Gafford and Lively really starting in, I want them to start together. I've put this lineup in 2K, it really does work, and they can definitely play together. Having PJ hold the fort on defense and offense, it can really help them to score.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be an important point, Rohan, especially as we continue to, grow. And I'll ask you about, Jason Kidd. Do you think, I think fans have been, they've had some mixed emotions. Jason Kidd obviously, I think, silenced some of the doubters, especially after making it to the finals. But Rohan, do you think Jason Kidd has what it takes as a coach to really properly utilize the full talent of this roster?
Oh, yeah, of course. If you look at the other coaches from Dallas, even the one that plays for the Cowboys, he hasn't done half of what Jason Kidd has done. But anyways, on Jason Kidd, you saw in the last year's playoffs, right? Game 1, you would always lose. You knew Game 2 he would come back and make adjustments, help the team win Game 2, and more so win the series itself. I really like what he's doing as a coach, and I can't wait to see what he's going to do this season on the sidelines, coaching Luka, Kyrie, and Klay.
Yep, absolutely. Timothy, do you think Jason Kidd has what it takes to really get that championship caliber team?
Yeah, I think his biggest thing is he has to step up with load management and game management. You know, he played Luka, he tired him out in the playoffs, right? That's something we can't do this year. You can't tire him out in the regular season so there's nothing left in the playoffs. But also game management, knowing when to call timeouts, knowing who to put in the right spots. I think if he can step both of those up, he definitely has what it takes to win it all.
Yeah, so we'll definitely have to see. Real quick, though, I'm going to ask you guys to be the coach. Timothy, I'll start with you. What would be your ideal starting lineup for the Mavericks this season?
So for me, the starting lineup's got to be the 1 is Luka, the 2 is Kyrie. I'll start Klay Thompson. You know, offense first, right? I want to get on the board as early as I can. I'll play P.J. Washington at the 4 and Derek Lively at the 5. I think having both the big guys out there could, tire one of them out too early. I think you start Lively, have him play more minutes, but still balance it out with Gafford. And then obviously Marshall and Grimes can fill in for Thompson and Washington and just rotate throughout a game.
Yeah, that sounds good to me, Rohan.
I mean, I definitely have Klay in my starting lineup. I don't know why you don't. But, you pay a guy 3 years, $50 million, you got to have him in the starting lineup. But I do agree with him. Some say that P.J. Washington should be in the starting lineup. It's just because, talking about defense, I want Daniel Gafford and Derek Lively to really start for this team. P.J. Washington can come off the bench, hold the fort for that team, a proven scorer. With Klay, Kyrie, Luka, there's already too much ball movement going around those three, and I don't think it would give P.J. Washington a real chance to really show his potential this season. Okay, interesting. Yeah, so we'll definitely have to see. I'm going to go ahead and agree with you, Timothy. I like the Luka, Kyrie, Klay Thompson 3 for sure, but I like the P.J. Washington, the athletic ability, his defense at the 4 spot, and then I'm going to go with Derek Lively just to kind of see as he continues to develop. I mean, this is a guy that, just remember, he was a rookie last season. I feel like it's easy to forget that. And, he has a lot of potential going forward. I think he can really be that guy. Daniel Gafford's definitely going to be important to rotate in there. But, yeah, this team has a lot of depth. So I'll finish with this, Rohan. I'll go to you. Overall, can they go back to the finals and win it this year? Yes, they can. I promise you they can. It was funny to me how recently Jason Tatum was on the Jimmy Fallon show, and he's talking about his NBA Finals matchup, and he's like, I think it's going to be against Dallas. And so why not? Let's make his prediction come true, and more so, let's get revenge, and let's beat Jason Tatum in the finals again. Yep. Timothy, your thoughts?
Absolutely. I mean, they definitely have the talent and the roster to get there. It is still a very competitive Western Conference.
Yes.
I mean, you still have Oklahoma, you still have Denver, you still have the Wolves, right? Like, it's going to be a bloodbath in the West, but the Mavericks are built to get through it, and they're built to get to the finals, and hopefully this time win it.
Yep, absolutely. We'll see if they can go all the way this year. But we're going to bring it back to Denton and talk about some UNT soccer coming up next.
A 20-minute walk. I don't want to do this right now.
Don't worry, you can just use Transit.
Transit? What's that?
Transit is a mobile app that provides real-time tracking to connect buses, UNT shuttles, and even A trains. Simply download the app, then tap on the search bar and type where you want to go. In a matter of seconds, you get results for all available routes. And the best part of it is, it's completely free for UNT students. What are you doing?
I'm downloading it right now.
Download Transit today, and remember, make life better without a car.
What does Talons do?
So I am the Vice President of External Relations for Talons. That means that I basically oversee all the external committees. Our external committees entail our Model A, it's a Mean Green Machine. So they bring it to football games especially, so every game it's kind of there, every home game. The Model A is like a symbol of UNC pride, and it's a big tradition that we are so lucky to uphold and maintain. When people look at it, they see it, and they're like, that's the Mean Green Machine. There must be a game today or something to ramp up school spirit for basketball, softball, volleyball, any of those things. We have amazing teams, so we just want to show school spirit for them. Bonfire Committee, which is in charge of putting together the bonfire every year for homecoming. It's kind of just a whole semester-long process up until Build Week that we have to put together and oversee and make sure safety regulations are followed and risk management is taken care of. Cannon Crew, which oversees and takes care of the cannon. They fire it at games, they take it to special occasions.
Welcome back to Sportszone. I am joined by Jalen Bullock and Nick Volpetti, and we're going to get into some UNT soccer. UNT soccer, really a team that had a tough start to the year. They had some really tough, challenging matchups, but since then they've been surging. Nick, I'll start with you. How have you felt about UNT soccer season so far?
I really think it's been a fantastic start to the season. Like you said, they had those 2 really tough games at the start of the season against Power 5 programs. But, I mean, ever since then, they've been undefeated. They've won 6 and tied 2. Their goal difference, they've scored 25 and allowed 6. So, I mean, not just the record, but, like, the way they're playing is good. They're preventing goals. They're scoring goals. In the last 5 games, they've only allowed 1 goal. So even lately, like not just across the whole season, but when you look at lately, it's been especially good, especially defensively. And in conference play, they've already picked up 2 wins. All of last season, they only had 2 wins in conference play. So I think that's really big. Last season, they didn't make the conference tournament. So starting off with those 2 wins should help them get there, hopefully. And wanted to shout out Rachel Roebuck. She's been great. 6 goals, 3 assists in the 10 games that she's played.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been impressive. I mean, 6-2-2, undefeated in conference, like you said there. Jalen, what are your thoughts on the season so far?
So this team, compared to last season, returned a lot of players. We had 9 returning starters on this team. Maddie Ogden, returns in goal. And just that defense, as you spoke on, has been absolutely phenomenal. Not just the goal differential, but just really how they control the game. The midfield has been superb. There's a lot of young players on this team as well that have already made a big impact. Just everything is clicking. I really feel like the year 2 in the American, they've really started to figure out what works for them, what doesn't work for them. And they're just off to a great start. Really excited as we get deeper into the conference play. Yeah,
absolutely. I liked what you said about Maddie Ogden there. We'll talk more about her later. I mean, she has been incredible player of the American League Player of the Week. And the goal a couple of weeks ago. So really, it's just been impressive what they've done so far. And I want to bounce back just a little bit to the beginning of the season. Those 2 tough games, Oklahoma and Alabama. I mean, not schools we typically play here at UNT. But, do you think, Nick, that maybe those were a blessing in disguise as they've been really surging since then?
Yeah, I really think that they were a good way to prepare for the rest of the season, because when you get that experience to take on a program like Oklahoma, a program like Alabama, it helps you get ready for those maybe a bit lesser games, or maybe playing teams that are inferior to you or at your level in non-conference play. And then as we continue on here into conference play, you know what it's like, you know what the competitiveness is like at the top level. So if you bring that same competitiveness, you should have the advantage over teams that are at your level, especially if they haven't had that experience. And even though they did lose those 2 games, they only lost both of them by 1 goal. I mean, if one thing had gone differently in those games, they could have earned a tie in at least one of them. So yeah, I think that even though they lost them, they were good preparation, and they were almost there too.
Yeah, that's, I think something really important. I mean, OU is a great women's soccer program. Alabama's ranked 20th right now. And, to only lose those goals or those games by 1 goal, I think that's really says something for this UNT team, not just for being competitive, but just their team chemistry, right? I mean, just being able to go in there against tough teams and really put on that kind of performance, I think that's big. Jalen, your thoughts on this going forward?
Yeah, 100% I have to agree, especially facing 2 SEC-level opponents, bigger programs that, have played at the biggest stage in college soccer. And with those games being close, a lot of things I feel like we were able to take away from those losses and things that worked. Now we've had, stretches of games we're putting up 5 goals, putting up 9 goals in some cases. And it really has to do with that early season scheduling. So I really think that was the smart move, getting those really tough opponents out of the way. Because if we're being completely honest, the top of the American is completely different from the bottom compared to, a conference like the SEC, where we could play Vanderbilt, and get a run for our money. So I really think those 2 games was a great season opener, and those are only 2 losses. I'll take that.
Yeah, absolutely. And then so for UNT going in this Thursday, tonight, against Temple, what do you think, Nick, is going to be the biggest keys to victory here?
I think that you really have to take advantage of a Temple team that's not quite as strong as some of the other teams of the American. Last year in American Conference play, they went 0-9. They couldn't even get a tie in their 9 conference games. This season hasn't really been much better for them. They're 2-8. Overall, lost their first conference game. So I think this is a game where, like I said, you can look to maybe put up 3, 4, maybe even 5 goals. Obviously, in terms of points, a 2-1 win is just as good as a 5-0 win. But, this is a game to maybe potentially build some more confidence, pad the stats a little bit. Don't want to count anything before it's actually happened, but this is a game where I think UNT can really show their skills.
Yep, absolutely. Back at home tonight, in front of the home crowd. Jalen, do you think they can make a statement tonight?
100%. And speaking on that Temple team, 2-8, as you spoke, they also allow 2.8 goals per game, which is pretty terrible.
It's a high number in soccer. Yeah,
and, the mean green right now, we're averaging 2.5 goals, ourselves. One player that I really want to look out for is going to be Emma King, the freshman in the midfield. She played phenomenal in this last game, had that assist, 5 shots on target. And just really seeing how the midfield's going to dictate against this Temple side, I really think it's going to be a high-scoring game. in our favor.
Yep, absolutely. Nick, do you think, are there any concerns, or do you think this is a team that really they can just kind of run over?
I think for the most part, it's a team that they can do really well against. One player I should shout out for Temple is Sherry Atkins. She's been their best player, I think 2 goals, 2 assists in their 9 games. So I think she's the main player that you kind of got to key on and shut down. But like I said, for the most part, I think this should be a blowout in favor of UNT.
Yep, absolutely. We'll have to see. So obviously, tune in for that game tonight. But they have a short week, just right after that, going to East Carolina this Sunday. So it's going to be definitely a different kind of challenge, short week, short game. Do you think that UNT will have what it takes to really stay focused and get another win on Sunday?
Yeah, I really think so. This isn't the first time that they've had short weeks. This is kind of a common thing where you play on a Thursday and then you got to play in that day game on a Sunday. It's just kind of how it works. But just want to talk about East Carolina a little bit. They're a team that likes to control games. They haven't scored a lot of goals, haven't allowed a lot of goals either. They've had 3 ties this season. All of them have finished in 0-0 ties. So they're a team that, like I said, they're good defense, but maybe not necessarily the best offense. So I think one of the keys for UNT is if you can maybe get 2 goals against a tough defense, then I think they'll be in a good position to win.
Yeah, it'll likely be a little more of a challenge than the Temple game.
Yeah,
so we'll definitely have to watch. But Jalen, going on the road into East Carolina, do you think they'll have what it takes to get that win?
I think they have what it takes. ECU is a very interesting, team on paper. Of course, they're coming off those back-to-back losses to UTSA, to James Madison, but 2 decent programs. I really think it is going to be big for that midfield to push up, really get into space, create a lot of chances, especially playing a team like ECU who knows how to park the bus, if you will, and slow the game down. The Mean Green cannot allow to play to ECU's pace. That's really going to be the difference maker. We got to make sure that we're creating the chances, that we're pushing up, that we're playing to our game.
Yep, absolutely. And Nick, do you think they'll be able to execute that? Kind of put some goals on really a pretty good defensive team in East Carolina.
Yeah, I think so. This season they've scored a good amount of goals. Like I said, 25. A lot of that has to do with a 9-0 win over Prairie View A&M. But still, I think that they've been good scoring goals this season. And I think maybe if Rachel Roebuck can get another goal on the board, then they'll have what it takes.
Yep, absolutely. So yeah, it's been a cool start. It's been very interesting. Jalen, do you think this team has what it takes to kind of maintain the success going forward over stretch of the season?
100%. Into the postseason, we'll really see. But I definitely think that the American is theirs to take it.
Okay.
This is a great side. I think that the only teams that are really going to give them a challenge might be like a Memphis, might be a South Florida and a Rice. I feel like those are really the only programs that are going to give them a challenge, but I really think the American is wide open for them to take. Also, a thing to note is if they are able to win tonight, that would be head coach's John Hedlund's 400th win, which would make him the 20th coach to get those.
Yeah, absolutely. Nick, your thoughts? That's a great stat.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that they have what it takes to win the American. Like I said, last season it was kind of unfortunate they didn't get into the conference tournament, couldn't finish in the top 8. But this season it looks like they're on a good pace too. They have 2 wins. They should be able to get their 3rd tonight. So they'll be able to get a 3-0 start. And as long as you can get into that tournament, get into those quarterfinals, anything can happen really. All you got to do is win 3 games. Any of those 8 teams just have to win 3 games and they'll be conference champions. So I think the tournament format sort of plays into the favor of anybody to take it really. Like you said, it's wide open. It really is wide open. So I think that they definitely have what it takes.
Yeah, so you both mentioned it there, but this has been, they've proven it. They've shown ever since those first 2 games, they haven't lost. And they've undefeated against AAC opponents. Do you think, Jalen, beyond, just this year, do you think this is a program that can really kind of establish itself as one of UNT's top athletic programs going forward?
100%, especially with, as I mentioned earlier, a lot of the veteran leadership. Of course, we have a lot of players graduating. Of course, Maddie, this will be her last season with us. But just the recruiting, from a recruitment standpoint, what you could do, building off of this season. Of course, being in the DFW area, who's not going to want to play in this area, and for a big rising program in Texas. I really think that success is going to continue, especially as I believe we have learned the formula of how to be successful in the American, especially with women's soccer. So I think that we're in for big things going forward.
Absolutely. Nick, your thoughts?
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Jalen. I think last year was sort of a transition period from the Conference USA to the American, where they had maybe a bit of a struggle, but I think that was more of an outlier for this team.
100%.
In the past, they've been a great program, like you talked about. Coach Hedlund almost about to get his 400th win. I mean, that just shows how good of a program they've been during his tenure. And I think, especially as long as he stays here as the UNT coach, then they'll be able to sustain the success in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. And then Jalen, I'll let you finish it off. Who's been your MVP so far for this team?
It's really hard to choose one. As I mentioned earlier, I want to go with Emma King, the freshman, simply for the fact of what she's really able to do out there. Her game is silky. It's very smooth. It's very elusive, if you will. And she's one of those players not always going to get on the stat sheet, but is really able to create chances. Of course, doesn't have the most goals on that team, but just really, really a young, mature player, most importantly. I mean, she's really the piece that going forward after the season, as we spoke on, I really think she is going to be some player to look out for.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be exciting to watch. So for UNT soccer, be sure to tune in tonight and on Sunday. Hopefully they can get those big-time wins. But coming up next, we're going to talk about pop culture, politics, and yes, Taylor Swift in sports.
But it's easy to lose track of how much you've had. Apps like Drink Control and Alkadroid can help keep track of your consumption and blood alcohol levels. If you or someone else does drink too much, the signs of alcohol poisoning are as follows: pale skin, vomiting, confusion, low body temperatures, irregular breathing, blacking out, and is hard to wake up or cannot be woken up.
Dude, are you okay? Hey, what's wrong? Wake up.
It's an exciting time of year, but it's important to be responsible. If you suspect someone is suffering from alcohol poisoning, get help immediately. You will not get in trouble for seeking help if you are underage. For more info and resources, go to UNT's Division of Student Affairs.
Willis Library, located at the University of North Texas. It has computers, printers, and the building is open 24/7. By going online, you can book up to an hour of reserved space at one of the many private study rooms. Many of them are equipped with whiteboards, a table, and a TV to hook up to your computer. Textbooks can be checked out for free with a student ID. They also have many of these in ebook forms. This is still a library, so always remember to be quiet and respectful of other surroundings, especially in certain places where talking is not allowed. For example, the 3rd and 4th floor are completely quiet. As you can see, Willis Library has many options for students, with it offering many media sources and
Welcome back to Sports Zone. I'm your host, Steven Lucero. I am joined by Emily Condry and Jay Latham. So we're going to talk about an interesting topic here, and that's pop culture, politics, basically all these other things going on in sports. And, it's been a time here in 2024 where sports is not just sports anymore. There's a lot more that goes into it. So I'll start with you, Jay. How do you feel about all these other things creeping their way into sports?
I mean, it's always been a thing going on throughout the history of sports. I mean, you can go all the way back to 1968 in the Olympics when you had John Carlos and Tommy Smith raising the Black Power fist during the Civil Rights Movement, going into that Olympics. And I mean, it's the thing going on. I mean, if you want players to express their personality and build their brand, well, you can't limit them there and say, oh, no, not that much. I mean, their personal lives matter just as much. And I mean, if you want to DM these players about your parlays not going through, you can't be mad when they want to express their opinions online as well.
Yep, absolutely. Your thoughts on that, Emily?
I completely agree. I think it's something that has always been in sports, and it will continue to be in sports. I think a lot of people will say that they should be separate, but I don't think that's really ever going to happen.
Yeah, and I think it's a case where, you're looking at this where sports is, it's entertainment. It's, these guys' careers beyond just on the field, and they've made those type of impacts, whether it's social change or whether it's just building their own brand. So is this something, going forward, do you think we'll continue to see at this capacity, or do you think some people will push for, maybe it to come out a different way? I'll start with you, Jay.
Honestly, with the growth of NIL, I think this is going to be one of those things that is going to start earlier and earlier as you're just pushing for kids to build their brands sooner and sooner so that they can get those NIL deals going. So I think this is something that's only going to continue to grow more and more, especially with the technology and social media being everywhere.
Yep, absolutely. Your thoughts on that, Emily?
I agree. I think, again, with the social media, like he said, I think that plays a really big part in getting to know these players a little bit better. And I think it's good that they're able to express what they believe in.
Yep, it's going to be, that's definitely important because it's, these guys, they're more than athletes, and that's definitely going to be a big part of it going forward. Next, though, I want to get into something that's been a little more of a hot topic in the NFL. Fans, media, commentators all split on it, but that's Taylor Swift. The superstar singer showing up at the Chiefs games, obviously relationship with Travis Kelce, but it's been a lot. I mean, going into week 1, I felt like I was seeing more about Taylor Swift than the game itself. Emily, do you think that this is okay, and why is the NFL really going so far with it?
Well, I think the media is being the media. They're going to do it whether or not the fans like it. I think even the people who don't like it, they're bringing more attention to it whenever they say how much they hate it. all you're doing is just bringing more attention to it, and that's exactly what they want. I think the reason why it's become such a big thing is because she is the most famous woman in the United States, maybe in the world, and she's dating a really loved player. We all love Travis Kelce. You can't not love him. So I think she's there to support her man, and I think that's a really big deal for them, and it's a really good marketing option for them.
Yep, it's definitely interesting. Jay, you feeling the love, or you getting a little tired of this?
I mean, personally, I'm a little tired of it, but the NFL's job is to promote their stars. And if you want to promote your stars, there's no better person than 2-time Super Bowl, 3-time Super Bowl champion Travis Kelce. And, I mean, he's dating the lady that has the most streams on Spotify. She's the most streamed woman on Apple Music. So if I'm going to bring in new fans, that's the person I want to promote right there. And, I mean, as long as she's dating Travis Kelce, I think that's as long as they're going to push Taylor Swift.
Yep, absolutely. Emily, do you think it's going to keep continuing, or do you think there'll be a little bit of a change or, back off?
I think maybe once the initial shock of the whole thing wears off, I think maybe they'll back off a little bit, but it has brought a lot of good things for the NFL. So the NFL attained its highest regular season female viewership since the year 2000, which is when they started tracking that. So there's a 53% spike among teenage girls, a 24% increase among women aged 18 to 24, and a 34% rise among women 33 and above. So she clearly has single-handedly brought more attention to the sport, which is really good for the NFL because all they want is for people to watch them.
Yep. Piggybacking off of that, I mean, the reports came out that over $330 million last year was brought in for the Chiefs, allegedly tied to Taylor Swift. So, I mean, it's not like they're doing this for nothing.
Yep, and it's interesting because you have that take. It's the new fans that you brought in. I mean, the new viewership, it's been through the roof. It's been insane. But, for I think a lot of the more traditional fans, they're really tired of this. How do you think the NFL balances this, Jay?
I mean, you just do it the same way you do any team. I mean, you got to understand that, we talk about the Cowboys every week. Do you think, I mean, this is nationwide coverage that you talk about the Cowboys every week. Do you think every single NFL fan base wants to hear about the Cowboys? I mean, we're tired of it, but guess what? They're America's team, whether you hate it or love it. Everyone's going to talk about the Cowboys. So, I mean, as long as Taylor Swift is Taylor Swift and puts up numbers, then I think we'll just keep talking about her.
Yep, absolutely. Emily, your thoughts?
I completely agree. I think you said it more perfect than I ever could have.
Yep, and that's just might be the way of the world right now for the NFL. So fans, well, as long as they're still together, I guess we're going to have to put up with it for now. So we're going to switch over, though, from the NFL to the NBA. Talk about Bronny James. He's a prospect, coming out of USC where didn't do a whole lot. Not really a draftable player in most people's eyes, but gets drafted by the Lakers, teams up with his dad, LeBron. Jay, what are your thoughts on this whole situation?
I think it's a messy situation for sure, but I mean, you gotta take an understanding. He literally died at the beginning of the season, preseason. This is a guy that was one of the top players coming out. He was an All-American, and it was deservedly so. We saw it on tape. This guy's a plus defender, plus IQ guy, and I think teams, I understand that with Bron coming into free agency, that if you drafted Bronny James, Bron was coming with you. And do you want to give $50+ million a year to a guy who has maybe 3 more years left in the league?
Yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting to see how they balance all that. But I think the main thing that really made a lot of people upset was his agent telling other teams, don't draft him. Don't draft him. Don't look at Bronny. And it was basically just a point where the fans were like, okay, this was basically scripted. We joke about the script all the time, but this case, it really seemed like that was the case. What are your thoughts on it, Emily?
Yeah, I agree. I think I'm not personally a huge NBA fan, but I think I would be a little bit upset with the whole his agent telling people not to draft him. I think the point of the draft is that you aren't for sure if you're going to be able to get who you want. But I think he could have benefited from more experience before he just jumped into the biggest league, the NBA, and with all the big guys. But I'm a sap, and I love the fact that he gets to play with his dad, who's a legend, who doesn't have that much longer left in his career. And I think it'll be a really great experience for both of them.
Yeah, absolutely. It's an unprecedented situation. How can you not be excited to see, one of the greatest of all time playing with his son? Jay, I'll ask you, though, if his last name wasn't James, do you think he gets drafted at all?
I think if his last name isn't James, he's not even coming out this year. I'm just going to be honest with you. I think he stays another year. I mean, that was a studded USC team. They had a lot of stat guys on that team, and I think one more year after the heart issue, I think that would have gave him more time to develop. It really showcased his talents. But, I mean, his player comp is Davion Mitchell and DeAnthony Melton. So we're not talking about LeBron James prodigy here. We're talking about a successful role player. And I think he can fulfill a successful role player for a guy drafted in the second round. Second rounders don't often even stay in the league for very long. So we're putting very high expectations on a guy who really wasn't even drafted that high if you think about it.
Yep, we'll definitely have to see. But one thing's for sure, those TV viewers are going to be through the roof for that Lakers first game. We'll see how much he actually plays, but it's definitely going to be an interesting situation to watch. But that is it for us at Sportszone. I hope you guys enjoyed the show. Thanks so much for watching. Be sure to follow us on our socials at NTTV Sports, and stay tuned for NTTV Nightly News.